Good morning and welcome to our session, Enabling Employees to Retire Healthy and Happy at the University of Lincoln. My name is Kath Sinclair and I work for a company called Wealth at Work. I'll explain a little bit of background about what we do. So we're a specialist provider of financial education and guidance in the workplace, and this is supported by regulated advice for individuals. So our aim is to help employees make informed decisions to improve their financial well-being throughout their career and maximise their income at retirement. So for example, last year we delivered 3,150 seminars to over 40,000 employees and conducted over 14,000 regulated meetings. So I'm going to hand over to Ian now, who's going to introduce himself and what he does at the university.
Hi everyone, I'm Head of Reward at the University of Lincoln, and I'm going to bring the session to life by talking about our partnership with Wealth at Work and how we've been delivering financial education and wellbeing in the workplace at the University of Lincoln.
So we've been in partnership with the University of Lincoln now for 9 years, and the shape of this financial education programme has changed a lot over time. So in today's session, we're going to look at 5 different areas that have been instrumental in meeting the university's long-term aims. So Ian will explain how the university has been able to build an effective long-term financial wellbeing strategy, the challenges we have faced, and how this fits within their overall wellbeing strategy.
So talking through a case study at the University of Lincoln in terms of how we've approached our financial education and wellbeing, I think first of all it's about acknowledging the fact that in a university we have a very diverse workforce, but education is the core of what we actually deliver. So when we looked at our programme, what we wanted to make sure is that it was always going to be underpinned by education and allowing individuals to make informed decisions about the financial matters in their life. What is interesting is that when we talk about financial education, there's actually a lot of barriers in the workplace to getting engagement with the agenda, and we knew that we needed to address those when we looked at how we'd make a programme work. We find that some individuals like to bury their head in the sand on financial matters. We find that some individuals find it difficult to have conversations about finance. We find that some individuals believe that they actually understand financial decision making throughout their career. So first of all, it's important to acknowledge that there are barriers to engagement. What was important to us in getting started with our programme was making sure that it was engaging and making sure that it's relevant. The subject matter itself isn't always one that people jump at finding more about. What we wanted to do is to bring it to life by introducing the concept of self-assessment for individuals and tools which meant that they could take ownership of their financial well-being and decisions that they make. Communication was always incredibly important to us, and making sure that we get the marketing right for the programme. So when we looked at how we wanted to pitch it, we ran through a lot of ideas with Wealth at Work to make sure we got the feel right in terms of not wishing to simplify financial matters, but still doing enough to make individuals want to learn about it. We actually often find that with communication, it's actually a little bit of the shock therapy that works with individuals, and people can be quite blasé about something that's actually going to impact them in many years' time. So asking questions as part of our marketing theme of, are you saving enough? Or, are you missing out? Are actually things that grab attention in the workforce as part of the communication piece. It's also really important to make sure that we make it relevant. In a university, we have a diverse workforce of meeting the needs of students who are also workers for the university at the very start of their financial journey, alongside individuals. Our oldest employee is 78, working into retirement. So their financial needs and their financial support and well-being situation is often very different. So when we communicate, what we like to do is make sure that it actually feels relevant to the audience. With Wealth at Work, we've delivered programs for students which were called Financial Fairy Tales, which was all about myth busting, financial education and financial factors in their life. And we go all the way through to post-retirement and supporting people long after they work at the university and making sure that they feel they can still dip into education through Life Choice, which is our financial wellbeing and education platform. We really try to understand our generational workforce needs at the university, and we like to use the approach of layered learning. So the idea that financial education is never going to be a one-stop shop where you're taught something and that's it. You've got the skills. What we know is that it's an evolving scene that changes frequently, whether that through government or whether that through the local workplace. So we like to think that this education is something that is layered up. And we find that quite an important way to approach it, to make sure that people know that they need to keep coming back to top up on their knowledge, to again make sure that they've got the education to make decisions. When you bring in a program, it's often looked at to say, well, how do you measure the success of it? And I know when we first discussed our business case for why we wanted to introduce financial education and wellbeing programs, the question is, well, what are we going to get for the return on investment? Because ultimately, we're perhaps trying to motivate people in the workforce through this program, or more importantly, we're trying to make sure that financial matters don't become a demotivator. We're trying to make sure that throughout their career, their financial planning mirrors their career planning, and whether that means retiring at 55 or whether that means still working at 78, we don't want the financial factors to be what informs their decisions. So it is really important for us that when we look on, well, how do we measure a success factor? Measuring things like motivation can often be quite difficult. One of our real successes when we got the program started of measuring how people were getting value out of the program was something which Wealth at Work came up with, which was measuring knowledge and understanding before workshop sessions and then measuring it again afterwards. And from that, we've seen some quite outstanding results, which really show this theory of people don't understand what they don't understand. My final point that we looked at when we got started was making sure that this doesn't feel like a standalone program. So making sure that we actually incorporate the program in our wider benefits and wellbeing agenda, and it doesn't become almost isolated and left as unknown, particularly because we want the program to feel part of the bigger wellbeing piece and not to be standalone. There are those intrinsic links which we see more prevalent than ever between financial health and mental health, and perhaps now between financial health and then social well-being as well coming into play. We wanted individuals, when we started, to see financial education and well-being as part of their benefits package, as well as being part of their well-being package. Thanks, Kath.
Okay. So as Ian said, this is a perfect case study because it's changed over time, and we've both been flexible in the way that the journey started, the way that we communicated the programme. I remember when we first started the programme, we had it in bite-size stages, but then it didn't quite work as well because people were attending one session but another, so we changed the dynamics of that. We measured success all the way through the programme. Feedback was very, very important as well for us. We took on board feedback, and the management information was really useful in shaping the programme forward. And if you think back now to what it looked like at the beginning 9 years ago and what it looks like now, of course, in the world, not only it's not post-COVID yet, is it? But we've been through the COVID period this year, and I'm sure going forward it will change again. So we're just going to go back to Ian now, and he'll just explain a little bit more why he thinks the conversation should start earlier in the journey and why life stage financial well-being is important.
Thanks, Kath. So I'm just going to talk through the case study now of the University of Lincoln and how we are ambitiously trying to make sure we've got this total workforce fulfillment of making sure that we pick up financial education and wellbeing at all times in an employee's life cycle. So This diversification of lifetime saving of our colleagues has been important, that we actually segment out into the different groups, noting that people have got different saving habits now and often want to utilise different saving vehicles at different points in time. So if I think back to when we started the programme, it was very much focused on pensions as being the savings vehicle that education was underpinning. When we speak to our workforce now, what we do actually know is that there has become a need in their lives for a diversification of savings vehicles, and we have introduced workplace ISAs, the ability to save through the payroll regularly to get some payments behind themselves, of something to fall back on, which has been particularly important as part of COVID. So it's particularly important for us that we listen to what the workforce are saying their needs are. The organisation's always been influential because we've actually started to evolve as well, and we've become much more complex. At the university now, we've got many more international individuals who come to work at the University of Lincoln campus, as well as individuals that we engage who are now based and working overseas. So that adds a complexity to how we think about our financial education. We've also got much more workplace agility. So people who can't always necessarily be available to be in a workshop, where we've been working with Wealth at Work to look at how we make the education programme more accessible online so that individuals can learn when they want to learn. And we're also very relevant about individuals who now, the University of Lincoln may just be a stopping point in their career. And what we're doing is very much picking up on a point in time for them, and then they might move on to another employer. So assessing people's needs when they get into the workplace, of what education they need, how can we support their financial health, and acknowledging the fact that then they may be leaving us in 3 or 4 years' time, very much feels like that's us, handling our piece of their work-life journey in terms of making sure we're relevant to them. And we've also got the employee expectations now, where I see that they believe the employer is much more of a critical friend in their relationship. And we've been working very hard on making sure that we've got those intrinsic links as to where financial health fits into the bigger programme. And finance and money, we know, is very important in making sure that our staff are available and able to retire on their terms. Thanks, Kath.
Thanks very much, Ian. And I think as well, what's been really important is along this journey towards retiring, we've met challenges along the way in various disguises, especially this year, because we started the year with doing face-to-face seminars within the university, and then of course we went into lockdown, so we weren't able to do that anymore. We then had to think about, and we're going to have to do it online. So the programme was actually split this year into some face-to-face and some were online, and we had some interesting results and feedback from that. I would say it was very positive, and I'm sure Ian would agree with me that the way forward now for the delivery of the education, the financial well-being, will be online going forward. So I'm going to pass back to Ian, who will cover the impact of COVID on the programme and how it was overcome, and also explain how the changes over the years with the university pension schemes has been communicated and embedded throughout the education. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Kath. And COVID really has been a game changer, but also, we see it as an enabler as well for us being allowed to review the programme and change it. So we very much sat down with a blank piece of paper with Wealth at Work, say, right, how are we going to deliver our programme post-COVID and what's changed in terms of needs? So the virtualisation of the programme has meant that Life Choice has very much become our financial wellbeing hub. And that is about delivering education, that is about delivering tools and self-assessment, and also signposting to wellbeing support. So we've now very much got this blended programme approach to financial health, which is semi-virtual, but not taking away the fact that the workshops will return, because we believe we need people in that scenario to learn from each other's experiences. But we're very much drip feeding into information out. The transition from task focus to more human management and treating people as part of the COVID impact has seen us much more with managers showing an interest in understanding how they can have in their toolkit financial education to support their employees. So it's very much changed the position of where it's now seen as a university tool and a management tool rather than being a HR-led agenda. We've been re-engineering the financial education and wellbeing because this has been a constantly moving scene for us throughout COVID. Often not our employees impacted, but understanding the impact of their family circumstances and perhaps partners and being made redundant, and how the implications are often not within our control, but we need to make sure we're looking after our employee. Education has been critical throughout COVID and is looking like it's going to be even more critical post-COVID whilst we enter these stages of uncertainty. So we certainly are not underestimating the need to get messages out quickly and more spontaneously. And we've been working at how we can use Life Choice with Wealth at Work as a model for making sure people are kept up to date with what we may see coming out in the budget in the autumn. And finally, in terms of where COVID is, I see us very much in this middle stage of returning at the minute, of trying to cope with a change. We've got the exciting stages of reimagination and reform to come. That's where we are trying to be proactive in thinking about how do we reimagine what financial education and wellbeing programs look like for employees in the workplace. Thanks, Kath.
Thanks very much, Ian. And I'd just like to thank everybody for attending this session. And I believe we're going to go to Q&As after. Thank you.
Well, many thanks today to both Ian and Kath for a great session. Many thanks. And we've got some questions to put to you. So we've got one here for Ian. The Chancellor might be seeing removing tax relief on pensions as a way to balance the books, and he's going to need some. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, morning, Maggie. And I think that's a great question. And I think, if I'm sat as a Chancellor thinking, how am I going to generate some extra income? We always know that the tax relief on pensions has been in the background, and perhaps this is where we'll see in the next autumn budget it being revisited. Personally, what I think will probably happen is that we may see that the pensions tax relief will be flattened. So we might just see a single rate at the 20% rather than the 40%. So we might see the higher earners hit. I don't think we dare fully remove pensions tax relief because the auto-enrollment agenda that this has been supporting, plus the impact on the lower earners, may really disincentivize saving for those millions who fall into that bracket. So it's an interesting one, and I do think we will see some movement in the next budget on pension tax relief, but possibly aimed at the higher earners, possibly aimed at levelling out the rate. But the Chancellor's left with a little bit of a quandary over it will generate the funds that we're looking for to balance the books of the country, but at what expense?
Great, thanks, Ian. And another question we've got here. So do you think we've now seen financial education becoming embedded as part of a benefits and wellbeing programme? Do you think that transition to being part of their core offering is now complete?
I think I can certainly talk from our organisational point of view, Maggie, and definitely we've transitioned from what was seen as a nice to have activity and perhaps only attracted individuals where they had a particular personal connection to it, as in they were approaching retirement, to now seeing it as part of that employee life cycle, that we see financial education on the school curriculum. We certainly see it on the university agenda when we get students, and it stops with them then with an expectation of when they enter the workplace with their future employer that they keep that education going. And yes, I think it's right to say that the move in seeing financial well-being as part of the benefits agenda and lots of different ways to support financial saving and saving habits, I think yes, it is now fully embedded as being part of what we offer our employees, and yes, it is seen as a benefit to be engaging with the activities and the agenda that sits against it.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, thanks again. That's all we've got time for in this session today. So many thanks again, both to Ian and Kath, for a really insightful, important case study. So next, you'll be able to see from your itinerary that we've got further fantastic speaker presentations, both here on Live Stage 1 on transforming your financial wellbeing strategy with Steve Watson of Cushion, and also Nobody Puts Wellbeing in a Corner. And if you get, and that's over on Live Stage 2. So if you go into your itinerary, you'll be able to see what you're booked for next. Just one last reminder while we're here to make sure that you're using the Chrome browser if you can, because that's really going to help you when you're visiting our discussion groups and also the video rooms. So look forward to seeing you on the next session, and please go and enjoy some time in our exhibition.